Welcome to another guitar show. On today's episode,
learning the major scale all over the neck, you're actually learning all the modes as well. What firstly improves everything if you start to look at more at lead guitar.
So in today's episode, we've got an acoustic special, and in this we will be talking about some lead playing and some rhythm playing techniques and tips, primarily for acoustic. Of course, they'll work on electric as well. Just a note, all of the things that we play will be linked in the description, as well as some notes on what we're playing as well. So we're going to kick it off with a nice jam, and Andy's going to take the lead on this one. All right.
Take it away.
Lovely.
Nice and chilled, nice acoustic guitar. What did we call it? We had a phrase for this
The
kind.
spangle.
The spangly chords, yes.
The feel-good spangle.
Yes, nice and relaxing, and this is appropriate, I would say, for anyone who's just wanting to step out of sort of what we call a standard open string chords. So G and C. If you're comfortable playing songs with those type of chords and you're wanting to step out of that, this is perfect for you. And I'd also say if you've started playing some single string playing, some lead guitar, but perhaps you're not getting the type of sound that we're getting there, this would be perfect for you. But I would encourage you to be comfortable with the major scale, either in open position in kind of the C major scale, or in position 1, which is, in this case, if we're in think of the key of C, that would start at 8th fret, but that position 1 shape. This musical situation, which we'll be talking about exactly what that means later, is in the key of E, and you were playing the rhythm, so would you like to demo the chords?
Yes, so the chords we're playing really are an E major, a G sharp minor with some added spangle, an F sharp minor with some more spangle, and then an A sus2, if we want to get a little bit technical. Again, I'm just thinking of it as an A major with those added top 2 notes, the same for all those other chords, and then just a little B before going back. So that's all the loop is. So just a very simple chord progression, just with those high notes to give it that nice feel-good lift.
And this would be an ideal, something to try out if you have a looper pedal. As I say, we do have that recorded as a backing track if you want to try out any of the ideas that we're doing here. That is on the website, as we say, the link's in the description. So we have 4 chords on a loop, and would you like to tell people how they can play, recreate what you were doing there?
Right.
Let's teach that first of all.
So for those of you in Strummers Anonymous who give us a bit of a, so we're going to break away from a big full 6-string strum all the time.
And I think that's very common for
Yes.
even a lot of intermediate players, people
Right.
that can start playing open mic nights and things like that. It doesn't matter what they play, it's all 6 strings all the time, because it can be very hard to find those single strings, in between picking. So the reason we went for this is we can start to pick more single
Exactly.
strings.
So you can take the exact same patterns you're accustomed to, but then let's change it so on down strums you're going to focus more on the thick low strings, and on the up strums you're going to focus more on the high 3, so you get this broken up sound, and you can really hear that kind of wobbling in there.
Absolutely, and if you just slowed that down and did 1 bar per chord, you have that kind of idea.
And even Andy here is actually, rather than all 3 strings on the down strum, he's just doing the root note, which is another way to break it up. You see the root notes on the E string there.
And this is what I call the most common strumming pattern ever. Down, down, up, down. But it's much more about which strings you hit and where you put the emphasis and where the loudness
It sounds
is.
hugely different when you do it like that.
You know, that compared to
it's massively different.
especially when listening back to it, often you don't realise when you're playing how much of an impact that has.
And it gives you somewhere to go dynamically as well. With loudness and quietness. If you start
Entirely. And you know, we're hopefully trying to hear an acoustic lead part over this as well, so we do need to keep it quiet. So that's one example, but the pattern you were doing earlier, I believe, was a bit more...
it was a little bit spruced up.
More of a, what we would call a 16 strumming pattern. So your arm and wrist is actually hitting the strings 16 times. Do you want to demo it just on its own? So this was, I believe, for the demo.
Oh yes.
We did this, didn't we?
And then if I slow that down,
and again, it doesn't have to be hard and fast like any one of those things. Play which you're comfortable with, because the whole idea of this is encouraging you guys to jam and then learn how to play some lead over it, basically. So these chords are in the key of E, and everything that we want to be playing, doesn't matter where we're playing it on the neck, wants to be using the E major scale. And I'm encouraging with what we're covering in today's topic, basically, which is acoustic lead guitar playing, even though all of this will work on electric, but we're encouraging more of a focus on melody and certain ideas and themes which work well on acoustic guitar. This spangle idea, as Thomas puts it, largely comes from us keeping the thinnest 2 strings ringing out all the time, which is a technique I learned, I think it was in High and Dry, by Radiohead, and that has a real vibe to it, which just is a similar thing to what we're going for here. The solo from that uses the thinnest string ringing out all the time, and then plays the E note at 5th fret of the B string, and then essentially the E major scale, but all on the B string. So that would be what we call the 1, or the root note of the scale. That's our E note. So then we'd have, if we think about it as do, re, mi, fa, sol, you could keep those ringing out, be entirely creating your own melody, and it does sound great just in scale order over this musical situation. That would be the first thing that I would be encouraging you guys to try, especially after, or if you're more used to maybe jumping towards the E major pentatonic, the E major scale. This just kind of jumps out in this musical situation because we have those 2 open strings in this key. The other thing that I was doing is basing this more on a little bit from the shape of the E major pentatonic, which hopefully you should be familiar with now. I would call this major pentatonic position 5. Yeah. That's how I would refer to it. Which again will be tabbed out on the website, I'm sure. But from there, I like to add pairs of notes, which are called double stops. So any pair of notes is a double stop. And here, this is just pairing up between the E note, harmonizing that with a major 3rd, and then doing a 3rd harmony from 1, 2, 3, with 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, play them together. And of course you can mix that up with single notes from the major scale or the major pentatonic scale, but adding those pairs gives you more of a theme to work around, and to then play some single notes but it gives you something to repeat, something to work around, and those are all very good things when you're starting and beginning on this road of improvising. Getting more comfortable with improvising, which is essentially making it up on the spot, but the best improvisation never happens that way.
It doesn't.
That's where we maybe start out and how it can look, but it's all based on a pre-planned theme appropriate for that musical situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's just finish off with a similar kind of jam, and we'll be talking about exactly what we're doing there, and then we'll get on to another example. Do you want to take it away? Starting off with even just picking together. Very effective. I'm going to go just pentatonic, major pentatonic. That uses a slide and any vibrato, anything you know how to do, and then the pairs of notes.
Very melodic as well. Not a focus on, like you said, playing a lot of notes fast or taking a very particularly scalic approach, more so hearing these melodies move as the chords do.
But building it around a theme gives you something to work with. You know, if we just say create melodies from a pentatonic scale or the major scale, it's I'd feel people can get a little bit lost.
Yeah.
They don't know what to play with, as it were. You don't have your bass for it. So that's a good bass to work around, and then the harmonies. Let's get on to another jam now. There we are. So for this little jam that we just did, we're in the key of C. The 4 chords that I was playing the entire time were C major, G major, A minor, and F. Now I was playing F generally like this.
I know that song.
It is true. That is an awful lot of songs, as anyone who's watched some of my videos or the Axis of Awesome video will know.
Don't give the game away. Don't give the game away.
I know, it's true. Peeking behind the curtain here a little bit, but with the way that we're playing it, you can make it sound an awful lot interesting. Notice the thing that I was not doing was this.
Strong Anonymous.
That's what you're calling. I like it, but it's such a small change, and once you noticed how you can change it that way, it's remarkably easy to do, and you always do it naturally, because again we're wanting to hear an acoustic lead line over this. So you know, this is leaving no room for even a singer perhaps, but certainly not for an acoustic part to be played. So the first thing, you know, if that's your level and you're like even doing, you know, changing to an F chord at all with a strumming pattern is hard, just really softening the strumming and just catching the strings, and maybe thinking about it more as just catching the middle 4 strings rather than taking a big swing at it and hitting all 6 strings every time, often will sound better. And I think people don't always realise that. The acoustic guitar can be very loud. Let's really try and quieten it down and see what other textures we can get from it. So that would be the first point of call, with a very standard 4 chords, but the way that I'm playing this F is a full F chord, but we're not having to bar, we're actually using a mini bar. Well, hey, getting the mini bar out already on another guitar show. And then the second, third and fourth finger where they would be anyway on the F bar chord, having this thumb over the top. Now the thumb over the top is an option where we can either mute it or press it down if possible, but we would at least need to mute it. But what that gives us is some options. Not least one option where you can actually play all the chords that we're playing here with that one shape. But it does give us the option to take, for example, the middle finger off, get that open string, or you can move that first finger right on the tip and have the finished string ringing out.
So from the one shape, he's getting loads of different colours just added in.
Exactly, and those colours are essentially different chords, like an F major 7, for example, but we're just adding extra notes in from the major scale, essentially from the C major scale. Yeah. Could take that concept even further by having really the easier F, but the thumb right over the top, and then using that little finger, which I did on the second lot of examples. Just keeping the little finger down for every chord. And then finally what I did was use this first F shape that I showed, but moving that everywhere. And if I don't play, or even if you keep it ringing out that thing string, you can play the F, G and C. That would be from 8th fret, 3rd fret and 1st fret, and then it's just the A minor where we move the middle finger lifts off, and we're using the first finger like that, which either as a bar or even just like that sounds nice. And all those little colours, or spangle as you say.
None of them fundamentally change the chord. They just add these different bits to the tops like that. Still an F major, but now we've got a 9 in it. That's still an F major, but we've got a 7 in it. And you got to experiment a little bit with these shapes as to what works. Some of them in the major scale won't work that well.
Well, what we would say here, I would say these are substitutions for the same chord.
Yes.
So we're never making the C major a C minor, we're never making the F major an F minor, and the A minor is always an A minor, but we've got these extra colours or things that we can add, which really bring it to life, and the most common ones we will make sure are tabbed out on the charts on the website. What wonderful stuff were you doing on the lead line there, Thomas? So, I was admiring you playing.
I was kind of coming at a focus of 2 points I was trying to make on here. So with the acoustic, it's going to be much harder to bend. So really, I just substitute bends on acoustic for slides. You may have seen me over sliding, but it's to kind of get the point in that rather than...
Which I think most acoustic guitar, when people are first learning it, the one thing they're really lacking is that phrasing.
Yeah.
And the one thing we really try and get across on electric guitar is phrasing. Vibrato, bends, slides, and just the quality of the note that you're playing. But slides on acoustic are just the easiest way to add that same lyrical flavour rather than that. Straight away we've got more personality to them.
So I was just using, like Andy was in the previous one, this is a C major, so pretty much the same shape as he showed, starting from the 8th fret in that shape. So slides was the big one, and even some smaller slides where I would target a note, say I want to come into that note in this C major, I would give it a little semitone slide.
They're just going to the major 7th.
It's another phrasing technique.
Lovely. Brings it to life, doesn't it? Just that little slide.
It's so much more interesting now. So that's something you can really look at. And again, do a bit of experimenting on where you like them. It's up to you. Some of them you won't like, some of them you will.
Just to clarify, you're sticking in the area of the neck of major pentatonic.
Yep. Just like you had done before. And then just those added major notes to get a little bit more detail into the sound past the pentatonic. So that was the first technique I was going at. The second I was basing it off was something called sequences. So a sequence is when you take the same basic idea, you change the notes. So for example, maybe that idea, and you can hear it kind of just moving down. So if we make that a little bit more advanced, it's just that idea. So again, like you said, with themes or motifs, it gives you something to grasp on rather than kind of like flailing around in the dark of this big beast and trying to find notes that work. You've got this little idea, you just move it through and it kind of gives it a sense of something to hold on to.
I've thought about that in the past as a pattern, just same idea, different terminology,
exactly.
just thinking about it as a pattern that you can repeat throughout the neck really, really works. I think a lot of these ideas, I think you guys have actually got a John Mayer course, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
And a lot of these same ideas are quite John Mayer-esque. And I would say on the rhythm side of things, I think you guys also have a full tutorial of Under the Bridge, which I believe you teach.
I did.
A lot of the ideas that I was doing in our demo earlier were quite heavily borrowed by that. And you were mentioning earlier there is a track somewhere just of his guitar playing of that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And to just get inspiration from an ideas, that was certainly a big one for me, and I'm looking forward to listening to that one. So yeah, everything that we can give to help you there is on the website. But let's get on to our final little jam now. Beautiful. So what were you playing on the rhythm side there?
So this is kind of this is another guitar show does elevator music.
Well, hey.
So rhythm side, I was taking a 2-chord vamp. It was a B minor 7, a little broken up version, and an E dominant 7. So just 7 on the E, 7 on the D, 7 on the G, and then for the E7 it was 7 on the A, 6 on the D, and 7 on the G.
Treating both of these, I would just add as substitutions for, if you're used to just playing standard B minor bar chord at the 7th fret, and then perhaps an E major or doing your E dominant 7ths like this,
normal shapes.
Not only is this a lot easier on your fingers using these chord shapes, they're more interesting. They're physically easier to play, but they just have a sound to them. Which is to reiterate, that is a musical situation. We've gone for a certain genre here, the kind of piano bar, jazz bar kind of vibe, absolutely, and that really works.
So anytime you see that, like you said, that B minor or any minor chord, you can use that shape over it.
Absolutely. And then the rhythm was quite a little bossa nova.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of a little bounce going here, and technique wise I'm just using the little claw. So that's my second, my first, and my thumb. So the thumb is going to be on the root note of each of these chords. So for the B it's the E string, and for the E7 it's the A string. So it's just going to move back and forth. And then these two fingers are going to stay in the same strings. And it's more of a plucking motion rather than a strum, which we've been doing before. So you're going to get under them and kind of pinch together like that to get that. And you hear it's a bit softer than a strum. It's not got as much treble. And it gives you a bit more control as well. But now you've got 3 individual moving indexes rather than just one arm.
Very rhythmical, which can be hard for a lot of people to do. But even just plucking one then the other.
Yeah.
There's plenty of ways into this. Plenty of examples from it, but I love the rhythm you were doing.
And there was one last technique, which was
the
percussive slap. So that's on 2 and 4, kind of like a snare drum, if you ever listen to those drums tracks. And it's just giving the strings a bit of a slap. I mean, I personally do it with that type of shape, closed knuckles. And it's just coming down there. You can get different tones out of it, depending on where you happen to do it. I like to do it just in the middle. That's comfortable for me. Where do you do that kind of thing?
The tap that you're getting there very much comes from, I do get asked about this a lot, and it comes from the strings hitting the frets up at the higher frets. That's how you get that quality to it, which is very different to hitting it in any other fashion. But yeah, I entirely agree, especially with the kind of finger style jam.
And it's just another element. It's kind of like bass chords and drums that you're putting into this now. That's what this kind of style gives you, especially when you start breaking those up. So it's just a kind of another advanced version of playing a bit more.
Let's not forget the acoustic guitar is a percussive instrument. It is wooden and it has a hole and it is...
We've all seen those mad videos of people.
Oh, John Gorman, Andy McKee, all of that kind of thing.
So what were you doing on the lead side?
So one of the reasons we chose this one is it's a good way to cover a great example of where to use the Dorian mode. So it's not something to be too scared of. In fact, a lot of people learn the Dorian mode as where to add additional notes to the minor pentatonic. So if we think about minor pentatonic position 1 from the 7th fret, everybody watching this video should either have played that before, or that should be your first thing to do over this jam, because we're in a minor key, but also it just works for this musical situation as a first thing to try, a first way into this. And then I would describe, or many people learn the Dorian mode as filling in some of the spaces that this leaves. Primarily, every note that or string that you're playing with the 1st and 3rd finger, we fill both of those in. So essentially that means on the thickest string, we add the 3rd finger in, and then on the thinnest 2 strings, we also fill them in as well. And then on the middle 2 strings, it's the 1st finger needs to go 1 fret lower on both the middle 2 strings. Like that. So that would be something that most guitarists would start to use when they're experimenting with blues improvisation. But here it really fits the musical situation, because when we were coming up with this jam, we're really thinking of the B minor to E7 as using the 2 and 5 chords actually in the key of A, which can this could really throw a lot of people. But as I say, if this confuses you too much, think about it in the key of B minor, and the minor pentatonic works and the Dorian mode works, and these are the most common positions of both of those. But just to add a little extra spice into this, because we're using the 2 and the 5 chord out of the key of A, that means that the Dorian mode is going to work really well over this, because the Dorian mode is the second of the modes, so it would use. And I mean, this concept has always been very easy for me to understand, because modes were explained to me using a piano. So we have the Ionian mode, which is just the white notes on a piano.
Also known as a major scale.
Just the major scale. And then the Dorian mode, as a way it was explained to me initially, was starting on the D note and still just playing all the white notes on a piano. So it's it's the major scale, but starting from the 2nd note, which is why learning the major scale all over the neck, you're actually learning all the modes as well, just to try and get some higher level content into there. What was your way into modes, and particularly Dorian?
Yeah, I struggled with it for a while. I think the way I think about it now is that they're just different flavors of sound. So like you said, it's a minor scale with some adjustments. So you hear that minor sound, but then suddenly you hear that note coming across, and you think, oh, there's a little bit of something.
And the note that you've added there is a note from the E7 chord.
Yeah.
Which is the other way into why these notes work, because another higher level concept, rather than just playing whatever notes you happen to play when you're following one scale, is to try and play the chord tones of the chord that you're playing over. So when the E7 occurs, try and make sure that you're playing one of those one of those notes in your lead playing as well, which is when, for example, working with learning arpeggios and learning that kind of thing can be a very good advancing way to get a really cool sound, because you're speaking the same language as what the rhythm guitar player is, essentially. But yeah, just pulling it back to this particular jam, we've got these 2 chords. So the B minor, if you think about it as that as more of a overall shape, and then perhaps this way or even this. What I would encourage is the extra notes that are not part of the minor pentatonic, which I would say this one, and then in particular these 2 here, will sound great over when those particular chords happen. So when we're on the E7, for example, can you play the E7 chord for me? That note really works over it and has a lot of personality.
Now if you hold that, now there's a bit of spice.
There's definitely tension.
Yeah. So that's the B minor with the same note, and then.
And if I played this note, which is from the minor pentatonic,
sounds lovely. Over the B.
Over the next.
And then over the E. Very nice.
A bit more tension. And with all of this higher level content, all it's ever working on, and all music really is tension and release.
Yes.
There is a consonance and dissonance, and it is different. There's no right or wrong with it up to a certain point. In fact, a lot of the time we can actually play notes that are totally out of key, but if you just don't stay on them and you use it as a colouring and adding it for taste, it's a really cool way into it. If there was one lick I was to demo from what I was playing earlier, it is definitely a flick-off lick, which is quite good for any Dorian, so any blues players. You guys will, in classic rock and metal. In this particular case, demoing on the thinnest string, my first finger's at the 7th fret, 9th fret with the middle, and then 10th fret. You could do this with your little finger and 3rd finger. No right or wrong, it's entirely up to you. We can then do, and that was getting a solid sound of like every time you flick off, it wants to sound like it's been picked.
That's the hard part of it.
That's it. And you will only, even though if you want to do, to train that to sound better, you need to get it controlled first. And especially when you go to the other string, otherwise you're going to get other strings ringing out probably. And then, it's exactly the same frets, so that's why Dorian's great on the thinnest 2 strings. And then pulling that to the middle 2 strings, I would probably be using my little finger.
That sounds great over the B. So as well.
Either way. All of that.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Fits the musical situation. And it's just something a little bit more advanced, but based on something, especially if you could do the other ones, entirely based on the same stuff. So that's what we have to share with you this week with another guitar show. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And remember, everything here is ready and waiting for you to experiment with and learn from on the websites, on both the Your Guitar Academy website and the Andy Guitar site. And you can get the jam tracks for everything that we've done here. And please experiment. It's a lot of fun. And I think a lot of acoustic guitarists are a little afraid of lead guitar. They think perhaps, that's for the electric guitar players. That's not for me. And what firstly improves everything. If you start to look at more at lead guitar, it starts to make everything else fit together. You see the overall picture. But also, it can entirely be something that everyone can do. It's based on stuff that you're already doing most of the time. Fantastic. I think that's it for this week. Thank you so much. Be sure to subscribe to both the Your Guitar Academy channel and the Andy Guitar channel. We'll be going between the two every Sunday, and we hope to see you next time. Bye for now.